When it comes to the subject of Disney live-action remakes, it certainly feels like it's something that gets more heated up as time would move on. Like, whenever there is more Disney live-action remakes created, the more the subject itself becomes a little bit more controversial. And the more that Disney would go and take their animated classics and turn them into big-budget live-action spectacles with a whole bunch of CGI and A-list celebrities, the more the discussion would be brought up regarding these live-action remakes and the animated originals where the live-action remakes came from, where we see them pit together to find out which one is better. Now, the one good thing that I will say about that thing in particular, about that clash, is that I feel like it makes a great idea for an art piece that I want to try to create. You know, it gave me a lot of inspiration to do something artistic-wise. But the question is, what can I do? Now, I know that I want to try to do something a little bit different. Like, I don't want to go and do the regular drawings, like start off on paper and then finish it up on Photoshop or make a painting. I've already done enough of those. I want to try something new. I want to try something different that can really highlight the theme of the animated originals versus the live-action remakes with Disney. But then suddenly, one day I was just thinking about it, and then I got a crazy idea.
I should probably start by answering the big question, what is this crazy idea that I have in mind? Well, I really wanted to think outside the box for this one, and I came up with the idea of taking the images of the remakes, but cut them up to be in the form of their original animated counterparts. The outside would be the shape of the cartoon, while the inside is the picture of the live action. In a way, it's a lot like that Pixar short Day and Night, where the characters are flat and hand-drawn, but the content on them is a 3D world with depth. Also, I wanted to try something different than the usual drawings I would make by paper and then on Photoshop. In fact, I didn't even want to use the computer at all to make this outside of printing the images I need. That would be a little too easy for the project I had in mind. Instead, I'm going to be cutting the papers by hand in order to make the shapes. Going into the theme of Disney's originals and remakes, I started by figuring out how many to make for this project. Realizing that Disney had already made about a dozen, I decided to keep it simple and stick with the 4 big remakes that Disney released theatrically in 2019, since I made this art in 2019. These include Dumbo, Aladdin, The Lion King, and Maleficent. Okay, technically it was the sequel, but it was a good excuse to add her into the project. So with the subjects and the concepts in hand, it was time to get into the process of making the art. The first step was to get a good image of the animated versions, something that really defined the characters that we all know and love with Dumbo, the Genie, Simba, and Maleficent, which after I printed them, I traced the images so that I can only have the lines that say who they are. Next up was to trace the traced paper I just did. This time on tracing paper, and instead of just copying what I just did, I outlined what I needed to cut. In a way, it's like mapping out a jack-o'-lantern carving. You want to cut out as few pieces as possible, but the trick is to still find a way to keep some of the details to capture the essence of your picture. The tracing paper I got was big, so I did have to cut it down to make sure they could hold on to the pictures of the remakes. Also, to make sure the map can stay in place with the photos, I used paper clips to hold them all together. Of course, cutting the papers is the main attraction of bringing this art to life, but because it does take some careful hands and some precision to get the cuts right, it is also the longest step where each piece took me about an hour long each to cut. I originally thought to cut each character out in just one big elaborate piece, but with the exception of Simba, that did not go as planned and some did come out in 4 to 5 pieces. Not by accident though, it was just my mapping didn't connect as much to have them all in one. But the good news is that this doesn't take away any of the quality in the end result. Finally, once I had my cutout pieces all set up, I took a colored piece of paper that would both fit well with the character and contrast with the main color that's the most prominent in the cut picture. That way, the shape of the cutout can pop out a lot more to reveal the animated character that it represents. When looking at the final result, it raises an interesting question about my art. What do you see in the pictures? Or rather, what would you rather see? I'll leave you checking out the rest of my process. Enjoy!
And there you have it, folks. My little representation of the clash between the Disney animated classics and their live-action remakes. Now, I will admit, if there is one thing that I am a lot more amazed than how this actually came out, because admittedly, if I can say so myself, the idea actually turned out to be a lot better than I expected. But one thing I'm actually more amazed is the fact that throughout this entire process, not even once did I even cut myself. I mean, I spent hours with a very sharp object very close to my fingers, and not even once did I even had an incident where blood can be involved in the art piece. Wow, so yeah, this actually turned out to be great. So with all that said and done, I would just like to say thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, See you later, dudes!